Hello, it's Buki here, and thank you for joining me for this info session on divination therapy or tarot therapy on the House of Iyami Aja channel. What is tarot therapy? What is divination? Is tarot therapy a legitimate modality? Why should you care? Why might it be useful? Who is it for and how does it work? These are all questions that I'm going to be covering in this video. Looking forward to getting into it with you. Right, if you found me, it suggests that you are either a practitioner, you are interested in tarot as a modality for healing, you have received one or two tarot or divination readings and it's roused your curiosity. You obsessively watch tarot readings on YouTube because you find them to be activating, revelatory, or therapeutic. Either way, I am going to deepen into conversation and I'm glad to have you here. If you are new to tarot, you are also welcome. I'd like to suggest that you hit the subscribe button because this is going to be the first of many in a series of tarot therapy and tarot therapy as a modality for healing, expansion, and liberation. So let's get into it. What is tarot therapy? What is divination therapy? So to start off, tarot itself is a tool for connecting with the divine. Historically, it is seen as a divination practice, meaning that it is inherently spiritual in its nature. Tarot itself, as a tool for divination, acts as a mirror. This acts as a mirror for our inner landscape, our inner interior, meaning our psyche, our inner emotions, our subconscious state, our spirit, our energy body, our persona. It acts as a mirror of our ego, right? Which is the state that we tend to live in this 3D, and we tend to show the world, right? Ego does not mean, an aspect of our, it gets a bad rep because it's misunderstood. Ego is the multitude of facets that compose of the persona, the face that we wear, our personality, how we interact with the world, how we like to be perceived, how we behave, the way we think, our worldview, is all housed, our identity and what we see ourselves as is all housed in the ego, right? So I'm going to start by speaking a little bit about the differences between conventional tarot readings or mainstream tarot readings and tarot therapy, which sits in a different category. You'll understand why it does in a minute. And the primary reason is how it relates and reconnects us back to its origins, which are rooted in the spiritual practice of divination. Tarot therapy is more about supporting us as individuals in broadening our perspective beyond what we perceive in our conscious mind, enabling us to deepen into relationship with ourselves on a really intimate level, to better know the inner workings of our own mind, to understand the shadow aspects of ourselves, which speaks to the unintegrated parts that we deny, that actually can cast a shadow on our waking day, right? They cast a shadow on our behaviors, our interpersonal relationships, our outlook of the world, our sense of reality. So tarot therapy is about supporting us in gaining an insight into the deeper roots and of the circumstances that we are currently facing or we are dealing with. So it's a great tool for revealing what we might not be conscious of or what we might be denying. It really can act as a vehicle for our growth, right? Supporting us on our path of self-actualization, on our path of healing, and on our path of liberation. Tarot really is a great tool for diagnosing and supporting us in finding clarity and understanding at what is the actual root of our issues that we might not even realize that we have, things that are emotions, patterns, unconscious conditioned tendencies that live or are relegated in our shadow, or are just part and parcel of the ways that we have been shaped by our family, our societal, our societal shaping and conditioning, or the programming of the matrix, right? Tarot therapy supports us in zooming outwards to take in a broader spectrum of information, meaning the transpersonal aspects of our lives, right? The spiritual, the unseen. Transpersonal speaks to aspects such as the cosmos and how it's affecting. So astrology, for example, but it also speaks to lineage and ancient ancestry and how that affects us now. It speaks to possibly reincarnation, past lives. It speaks in terms of spiritual literacy, which encompasses connecting with the cosmos, connecting with Mother Nature, connecting perhaps to deities that are part of your belief system, whether those deities are angels, saints, whether they are nature archetypes or deities, from a specific spiritual tradition. It could be your ancestors, it could be your spirit guides, those could be plant allies, fungi, it could be aspects of nature, crystals, it could be animals, right? So tarot therapy uses a transpersonal lens that is anchored in the divination practice of the reader channeling messages, right, from the unseen realms, from this transpersonal realms. But it also supports us in having these very pivotal breakthrough moments of that activate realizations about ourselves, revealing parts of our nature that are unseen, that, as I mentioned before, might be relegated in our shadow, that we're unaware of, shy of, in denial of, but also truths that we just need affirmation on, right? That we need validating on. So is tarot therapy a legitimate healing modality? One word answer to that question would be yes, it is. Tarot has an ancient history. I'm not going to delve into it in this specific episode, but it spans millennia, thousands of years in terms of its history. It's got conspicuous origins in the fact that there's still debate about where it actually started off. There have been traces of its origins in ancient Italy, in China, and in ancient Africa, with rooted to a place where we call Egypt now, our ancient Kemetic ancestors. As a Black woman of African ancestry, I actually believe, and from my research and in terms of joining the dots, in terms of my lineage, the history of my spiritual Indigenous lineage practices, I tend to believe the narrative that it originated in Egypt, in ancient Kemet. So I want to start, tarot aside, tarot is as a tool, is a divination tool, right? In the form of cards. But divination itself is a ancient spiritual practice that has been utilized by many indigenous cultures for thousands of years. From, I say indigenous, but cultures of the global south, right through Europe, Mesoamerica, North America. Divination is a practice that is utilized by traditional medicine healers, by folks that are expanded in terms of their consciousness and their multisensory abilities, in terms of their psychic perception and their gifts. Historically, it has been used as a tool and modality for supporting folks in healing. But healing looks different in different cultures, and healing truly encompasses attaining the balance of an equilibrium of our mind, body, and spirit, right? So there have been many forms of divination, from scrying to tea leaf readings, to coffee grain readings, to sand readings, which relate to reading the footprints of animals, specific animals that are left in the sand, to using divination boards, which we see across different African cultures. For example, there's the I Ching in China. Folks use cowrie shells, chicken bones. There's a myriad of different modalities and tools outside of the cards themselves that support folks in divining. I myself, I can read art, nature, cards, as well as receiving channeled messages, which don't require a tool specifically, but cultivating a meditative state for those messages to be received. Traditional healers like shamans, medicine men and women use a range of different tools to get into trance-like states. This could be sacred plants, fungi, herbs. This could be music, drumming. This could be dance, somatic practices that support the individual in reaching an expanded state so that these messages can come through. So, as I mentioned before, divination is nothing new. It is prehistoric, and it has been used by a myriad of different cultures to support the advancement of communities, to support the healing of people, to predict people's destiny, to ascertain the roots of an illness, to ensure that communities are protected in times of war or famine or drought and disease. It has really, truly ancient roots, and you will find, amidst all these different cultures, folks within a community that were regarded as expanded, as chosen, as a shamanic or medicine person would be the people that folks would traditionally go and see. Medicine men and women have a myriad of different practices that support them into getting into that heightened state of awareness, whether it's the ingesting of sacred plants, psychoactive, hallucinogenic plants or fungi, ritual practices like drumming to get into a trance, somatic practices like dance, to rile the spirits. It's a serious practice that is still used in many traditional cultures today. And even though the world is rapidly modernizing and globalization is current, you will still find in most of African nations, South American, and parts of Europe, traditional healers utilize the practice of divination, not necessarily with tarot cards, through scrying, for example, which is being able to see images in water, through the use of, throwing flower petals or dropping candle wax, or just looking into, a blessed vessel of water. I, for example, can divine through art and artwork. and, you know, aspects of nature. I'm attuned with my animal spirit guides and have been for many a time. So I also read animals to a certain degree and can divine through them. They are messenger spirits that will sometimes directly deliver an actual verbal message telepathically, or sometimes it's just ascertaining their meaning through the way that they show themselves. This could be, you know, in a video that I come across, you know, scrolling on my phone. It could be a bird perched on my windowsill outside, or something that literally crosses my path, you know, on my day-to-day. There are myriad of different ways that practitioners, expanded and attuned spiritualists, I will say, divine, right? But tarot is a tool of divination. It is a divinationary practice with divinationary roots, but these cards are a tool. They're a modality for which the therapist or the practitioner, the reader, derives messages, channeled messages, right? Now, tarot as a tool itself is a lot younger than the practice of divination. And with the advent of capitalism, modernization, globalization, it is now widely accessible and easy to access. You don't necessarily even need to pay for tarot readings these days. There are several that you can get for free just heading on to a platform like YouTube, which is probably where you are watching this right now. So that is one clear difference between tarot therapy and mainstream tarot. Tarot therapy is inherently anchored in a spiritual outlook and lens. As I use those two terms intermittently, we can call it tarot therapy or we can call it divination therapy. Either way, it's centered in spirit. It's centered in the transpersonal. Tarot therapy is less about ascertaining future aspects, as I mentioned before, peering into what is necessarily peering in, let's say, to our partner's life to question something. Tarot therapy is more about getting to the root of perhaps why you are suspicious about your partner. So how does tarot therapy work? So tarot therapy is shaped by the questions, primarily shaped by the questions being asked, and works with you in a one-to-one session setting, right? This could be live, this could be pre-recorded. You send a little bit of info about your circumstances and situation with a reader or a practitioner, and then they do a reading for you that's pre-recorded. They send it to you, or you are on a live Zoom call or video call. I know tarot readers that also just even work on a phone call, right? I really suggest and advise to build a little bit of a relationship in terms of watching some of their pre-recorded readings, inquiring into their background to ascertain whether you are aligned or not. Some tarot therapists will offer a consultation, a free 10, 15, 20-minute consultation, so that you can question how they work, you can inquire into their belief system, their history, their practice, and get a sense of whether you are suited. I would also really suggest that you question, their background in terms of their spiritual beliefs, right? I'd say most tarot readers will be quite expanded. When I say aligned with them, it doesn't necessarily mean that your belief system has to mirror each other to the T. It means that there are no huge, contrasts, right? That might negate each other. You also want to work with someone that maybe is a bit more versed in spirituality than you are, that can support you on the path of your expansion, that can point you and navigate you in a direction of deeper inquiry, right? So in a tarot therapy session, the questions come from the quadrant, the person inquiring, but your tarot therapist might actually support you in shaping them better, right? Because they are versed in the practice of tarot therapy. So rather than using general open questions like, when is my soulmate going to come in? Which is what we might just ask a regular card reader, right? A tarot therapist might hear you say that and shape it in discussion with you. Is there anything that is currently blocking the path of a soulmate coming in for Buki? Right? Why would they check in with you about a reframe of that question in that way? Because taking that general open question, when is Buki's soulmate going to come in, for example, we're leaving it open-ended. Your guides might answer you by beginning to sort of give you an insight into the many things that might be happening before that even occurs, right? Specifically because in terms of spirituality, time does not work in the same way it does on this material plane. It's non-linear. So even though you didn't ask for a specific, you said when, and the cards, some suits and some aspects of the major arcana would point to things like speed, momentum, pace, but cannot define years, hours, days, minutes. We can get a sense, but in truth, Spirit will never tell you it's coming on Friday, the 27th of June in 2037, because of aspects like, free will get in the way and slow things down, right? The divine always knows. You might get in answer to that question, you might just get the wheel of fortune answering you, saying, well, it's destined, it will come in divine timing. And that's your answer, right? So Spirit will answer you in the way that you need to receive the answer. Tarot, a seasoned, well-practiced tarot therapist, on the other hand, will be better able to support you in reconstructing the question to get the answer that you're actually seeking, right? To get to the underlying or unseen aspects that you might not be considering. Is there something blocking the path? What can Buki be doing to support the incoming of her soulmate, right? Could be another question. In terms of mainstream tarot readings that are easily accessible, a lot of the time readers are speaking to a group of people, right? For the free readings that you can tap into on YouTube, for example. These might be themed by a zodiac sign, astrological dates, full moon, half moons, astrological, pivotal astrological dates or transits, or they can just be general collective readings for whoever needs to find it. Now, aspects of those readings will activate, will trigger aha moments, realizations, will resonate in shapes and forms, right? Some readings and readers might also read in a very therapeutic manner. Now, what is happening in the mainstream, as with anything, is that once a tool, a practice is commodified, I could give yoga as an example, it starts to be stripped of its original foundations, right? Its roots and the scaffolds of those roots. The scaffolds of tarot's roots are divination, it being a inherently spiritual practice that is transpersonal, right? Dealing with non-material aspects, meaning emotions, insights. We're literally channeling messages from the divine, from the universe, from aspects of nature, from deities, from ancestors. So there are readers that don't necessarily consider themselves spiritual readers, right? Spiritual tarot readers, but they still have a tarot practice. So this is why I'm saying, I'm sharing the fact that not every tarot reader is a divination or a tarot therapist. Not every reader uses a spiritual lens. Surprisingly, I know, I still don't quite understand that, because in my opinion, to extract or remove the spiritual component renders it less intuitive, less spiritually intuitive, and more about the intuitive lens of the reader themselves. I know from the stats and analytics that, you know, love readings are the primary go-to for so many people, right? And whilst there is, you know, nothing wrong with inquiring into aspects of your love life, aspects of your current situation or your future situation, tarot therapy is rooted in the support of healing, right? Of expansion, of liberation, of self-actualization. Tarot therapy is about putting the autonomy and the action, the impetus to take charge and leadership back into the hands of the seeker, right? So although tarot and our guides, the universe, God, Spirit, Mother Nature herself, the deities, that part of your pantheon and belief system, will support you as much as they can with your manifestations. What they are primarily attuned with doing is supporting you to grow, to heal, to emerge through any challenges, through any blockages that are stopping and preventing you from attaining them. So I'll give you an example here. So you're manifesting money, you're manifesting financial stability, a promotion so that you can reach this goalpost financially in your life and you can attain a mortgage, whatever it is, right? And you're calling this in from your guides and you're frustrated because you're unsure about when it's going to happen. You could go to a regular tarot reader and ask, I've been manifesting money. Can you check in with my guides? You know, how can I reach this financial marker? When am I going to get a promotion? Or even how can I make more money? And that's valid, right? The difference between that question, how your practitioner supports you in ascertaining the answer, and a tarot therapist would be to consider certain things that might be getting in the way. Is there a reason that this promotion hasn't come in yet? Is there a reason that this person's money manifestation hasn't come to fruition? Right? And when we find that out, what are the action steps to support the speed. What needs to be healed? What needs to be unblocked? What challenges need to be overcome? You will find that we reshape the questions, or we guide the quadrant into understanding that we need to make space for spirit in this question, not just the earthly aspect of it, right? Because this is a spiritual practice. So in terms of tarot therapy, constructive questions that honor that person's sense of agency, that supports their process of healing, expansion, liberation, to uncover those hidden blind spots or unconscious behaviors, is what the tarot therapist is here to support you with pinpointing and rooting out, right? Tarot therapy isn't about quick fixes, which is what I'm starting to witness in terms of this reductionism that is happening with, mainstream consumer culture tarot, right? There's a reader for everybody. There are readings that, will indulge us in that way. I kind of see it like food, right? What feeds us? There's fast food when you want a naughty quick fix. And then there's your nutritious, healthy food. And then there's, you can go into all sorts of different varied diets and juices and cleanses and all of that, right? So tarot also works in that way to a certain degree. Depending on what your circumstance or situation is, you can seek out a tarot therapist. You can get your quick fix, feel good 20-minute insight into what might be coming into your love life, or you can work with someone to support you in really unraveling, deepening into, the blockages, the shadow aspects that are at the root of some of the issues that you're navigating, right? It should be transparent. It should be relational. It's going to be intimate. You will be required to surrender, right, to the truth of what the cards have to offer you, to the truth of what spirit and your guides will be offering and suggesting. The thing about tarot is the cards never actually lie. So we also have to prepare ourselves for some perhaps unwanted realizations. We come inquiring about our soulmate, and then we leave realizing that we have some deep-rooted wounds that we need to tend to, that spirit or our guides, our ancestors are urging us to heal, so that we can create the conditions, internal, physical, psychological environments for that soulmate, that love, that dream job, that financial boost to come in. If spirit and your guides know that part of the reason you're struggling with a certain aspect of your life is due to an uncovered wound, they want to support you in healing it. And for sure, your manifestation will not arrive until it's healed, right? I see this in terms of my spiritual life coaching practice. Folks will have a revolving door pattern of situations that occur in their lives. This could be in relation to their love life. This could be in relation to their professional dynamic and space. Or actually, a lot of the time, all are interconnected, right? Because, for example, if we are not adversed with affirming our boundaries, we will keep attracting people, situations, and circumstances that test us, right? That pull us down, that make us feel unseen, unaffirmed, unheard, taken advantage of, exploited, cheated, etc. What spirit does is bring in people, situations, and circumstances to reaffirm a situation that needs to be addressed till we get the message. So if you keep having a revolving door situation, a sequence of patterns that you can sort of see emerging in your life, rather than just calling in the next person, the next job, the next situation, what Spirit would urge you to do is to tend to that wound, is to heal what's at the core foundation that is in a vibrational alignment with the right individual, so you can level up, right? Because when we're operating at a certain vibration, when we are unhealed, we will attract someone that mirrors us, that mirrors those unhealed wounds back to us. So this leads me to shadow work. So personally, I believe that tarot really should be exercised as a tool for self-actualization. In fact, the major arcana mirrors, themes of life, themes of growth, metamorphosis, transition, birth, death, rebirth, joy, sorrow, victory, failure, overcoming challenge, adversity, etc. Right? So it's important for me to also share that divination as a spiritual practice has existed for thousands of years in a myriad of different cultures, from Mesoamerica to the traditional healers of Siberia to our Kemetic ancient Egyptian ancestors. Divination has been used as a modality of inquiry into the spiritual realms, right? This has been primarily utilized as a tool of ancient medicine men and women, spiritual practitioners, wise ones, elders, to commune with the spirits in the unseen, the spirits of the land, spirits of the cosmos, our ancient ancestors, spirit of plants. Ancient shamans, medicine men and women use divination as a diagnostic tool for ascertaining health problems, dis-ease, the root of why their communities were facing famine or the land was in drought, to ascertain when rain was coming, etc., right? So this divination, and in terms of tools, tarot is actually a younger tool. Historically, divination has been practiced through the use of the throwing of stones, sand, looking at footprints of specific animals, specific creatures, depending on, and this is African historic ancient traditional divination in a myriad of African countries. Traditional medicine men and women would, depending on the country, leaving sand outside the doorway of the quadrant's house or the practitioner's home, and reading the footprints in the sand the next day. The use of chicken bones, tea leaf readings, coffee grain readings in Egypt, in parts of Europe, reading smoke and tobacco, and being a spiritual tool and practice was always rooted in enabling folks to heal, supporting the community, ensuring the safety of community members, the safety of their leaders, the safety of their land, animals, stock, etc., to understand and attune better with the cycles of nature so that they could predict and prepare for certain advents that were coming in, to have Can you imagine the benefits of having warning that a drought or famine was on its way, that a disease was going to spread and they should prepare and protect themselves, or, you know, shut down, board up, you know, the city or the town. So I want to perhaps maybe jump into speaking a little bit about how talk therapy is different from tarot therapy, and whether, you know, we can really consider tarot therapy to be a legitimate healing modality. So I want to start off by saying that, you know, we live in a culture that perpetuates the conditions of deep suffering, of struggle, of stress, of oppression, of violence. And unfortunately, traditional talk therapy is actually rooted in this current paradigm, this patriarchal, supremacist, often racist, depending on how you present, where you live, paradigm that we're living in. All the isms, racism, sexism, you know, etc. The list goes on. And you can speak to the most attuned therapist. These talk therapy primarily pathology centered, and also don't include the socio-political or conscious cultural consciousness values that perpetuate the conditions for dis-ease and disease to thrive, which is ironic. I'll give you an example. It's only fairly recently in both the States, America, and the UK that racial trauma, for example, was entered into the diagnostic manual. Now, apologies if I should have possibly given a trigger warning, but, you know, we're speaking broadly about racial trauma. I'm not going to get nitty-gritty here. For certain types of people, and, you know, research from the World Health Organization has been showing scientists, neuroscientists, clinicians for decades now that conventional talk therapies aren't necessarily appropriate for all individuals. There's certain groups, minorities, marginalized folks of color, for example, not all, and I'm generalizing here, but certain groups aren't practiced. You know, inherently, it's a relatively new, modern practice, you know, talk therapy. And it's not rooted in a myriad of different cultures, right? So some folks shy away from it for that. Also, it's quite expensive. There's a cost aspect. The efficacy is varied. It takes years sometimes to get to the root of something for a client or a participant in talk therapy to feel that they're healed, to feel that they've rooted out whatever their issues are. For other folks, it works for short interim periods of stress or anxiety, as a support mechanism. And inherently, that's what talk therapy was built as a pathologizing model to diagnose somebody with a disorder that then required a separate kind of treatment, right? Or as a band-aid. And in terms of their methodology, these forms of therapy haven't been designed to incorporate the social, political, or cultural histories for the context in which these mental illnesses, afflictions, psychological dis-ease, traumas are actually created. Talk therapy is primarily focused on allowing people to remain functional within the same context of that ongoing social harm, right? A lot of the time, talk therapy models have to work within the boundaries, the clinical boundaries that their practice is set, right? There's also the issue of the therapist's cultural biases. And a lot of the time, talk therapy doesn't really encompass the broader systems, belief systems, or attributes or philosophies and perspectives like the transpersonal, of the transpersonal nature, like our ancestry, our lineage, and the wounding that's passed down epigenetically, or our past lives, you know, or taking into consideration spiritual philosophies, lenses, etc. Tarot therapy, on the other hand, is free of those rigid constraints, the constraints that are set by the clinicians or the psychiatry board in whatever country that they're practicing. Another difference is that primarily tarot is, first and foremost, as I have reiterated a few times, a spiritual modality. So the transpersonal is at its core, and because of that, it doesn't need to, it's not confined and restricted, and it doesn't need to be detached like therapy is. So often with therapy, obviously it's a back and forth dialogue of questioning and inquiry, but a lot of the time the therapist has to remain neutral and not suggestive. Tarot therapists and tarot therapy practitioners, on the other hand, aren't restricted by that. And obviously each practitioner is going to be different. They will work within the boundaries of their relationship and agreements with whoever it is that they're reading for. But because tarot is intrinsically about truth, about reading what is coming through a channeled messages from the divine realms and what the cards are speaking to themselves, that neutrality is cancelled, right? It's not necessarily cancelled because of, you know, the lack of, and when I say neutrality, you know, a practitioner still needs to deliver a message in a compassionate, ideally trauma-informed or conscious or educated way, with care, to ensure that they're creating a container that supports and facilitates the well-being in terms of a little bit of aftercare of the individual if they are having to deliver a message that is possibly, you know, shocking or detrimental. They might have to inquire, do I have your permission to tell you the truth? This might be a little bit shocking or, you know, unsettling for you to hear. That would never happen in a conventional talk therapy practice because of the suggestive nature it would be considered as, right? So the difference is tarot therapy is not restricted in the same way that the spiritual realm is not restricted by the confines, the rules, the regulations, the dogmas of our materialist reality. Divination in so many cultures, historically, as I mentioned before, has been utilized as a tool for diagnosing and supporting an individual, a family, a community's healing, their expansion, their progress, their to support them on their life's path. Traditionally, from my lineage, I come from West Africa, and my tribe are the Yoruba people, and divination is core to their spiritual belief system traditionally, right? The advent of colonization unfortunately shifted things significantly and brought in monotheistic Abrahamic religions. Before this, Yoruba people primarily practiced the spiritual divination philosophy and practice of Ifa. So traditionally, in our culture and in many Indigenous cultures, divination has always been therapeutic. Not therapy in the diagnostic, in the pathologizing way it is today, sitting on somebody's couch and, them trying to get to the root of the issue, which will be coined by a certain set of attributes and, conditions to decipher what it is that you're struggling with. And then you might leave knowing you've got ADHD or PTSD or whatever it is. No harm in that, right? So how does tarot therapy actually work? You will either be working, if this is a self-guided practice, with a chosen deck and a journal that you would be noting down constructive questions, right, that support you in ascertaining the root of issues, to attain more nuance, more detail as it pertains to your challenge, your circumstance, your situation. Or you will be working with your chosen tarot therapist or practitioner. And this will normally be in one-to-one sessions. Now, tarot therapists constructing a tarot therapy reading with you would most likely want to do this in a live video call of some kind, or through a pre-recorded reading. The pre-recorded reading would be accompanied by a check-in session with you to ascertain what you are dealing with, what sort of insight you're looking for, how deep-seated the issue is, or the concern or the circumstance or the situation is, right? So some tarot therapists will offer free one-on-one consultations. I, for example, do. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this discussion and getting to know a little bit more about tarot as a therapeutic tool, the differences between tarot and talk therapy, how tarot therapy sessions work. If you would like to inquire into my practice, if any of this has resonated with you, if you'd like to deepen into conversation, by booking a consultation, you will find a link to do that via my website in the description box below. Really looking forward to you joining me, hopefully, for more explorations in healing with tarot therapy.